All right. So, hey, everyone, please keep yourself muted. We are recording this program. So after this presentation, please visit our YouTube channel and hit subscribe and smash that like button. Click the bell to get all our new content. That really helps us out. And stay tuned until the end for a bunch of great announcements and information on donating to AAM. So welcome to another educational and inspiring AAM program. This workshop with author Hope Bohanec explores the book, The Humane Hoax, essays exposing the myth of happy meat, humane dairy, and ethical eggs, edited by Hope. This book covers the timely topics of humane washing, greenwashing, language, and labels, and explores how so-called alternative animal agriculture intersects with feminism, affects the environment, is represented in the media, and impacts human and non-human communities alike. Humane washing and greenwashing are becoming more prevalent and pervasive than ever. It has never been more important to educate people on the truth behind the industry lies. And Hope is going to give us some guidance for helping us be better activists when it comes to communicating about these myths and talking real talk with people we meet. So my name is Michelle Granberg. I'm your moderator. I'm a mentor and team member with Animal Activism Mentorship. I'm located in New Jersey, been a vegan and activist for over 6 years. Our mission at AAM is to empower activists to boldly act and equip them with what they need to fight for animal liberation. AAM is a free multinational program supporting new and fledgling animal rights activists to reach their full potential. Founded in 2020, AAM offers a free 3-month mentorship program, which pairs experienced activists with aspiring activists. Through one-on-one mentoring, we generate an increased number of effective activists worldwide because we know this movement needs more activists. Additionally, we offer free workshops that train and educate our mentors, mentees, and the public. We have a podcast called the Animal Liberation Hour, and we host large-scale in-person events around the country. AAM is proud to be fueled by FARM, the Farmed Animal Rights Movement. If you're interested in becoming a mentor or mentee, or just want to get involved or more information or to donate, visit our website, animalactivismmentorship.com, and please follow both AAM and FARM on social media. So that being said, I'm going to introduce our speaker, whom you are all here to listen to tonight. Hope Bohanec has been active in animal protection and environmental activism for 30 years and has published the book, The Ultimate Betrayal, Is There Happy Meat? She is the executive director of Compassionate Living and the host of the Hope for the Animals podcast, which is wonderful. I always listen to it. She co-founded the Humane Hoax Project, the Ahimsa Living Project, and has organized hundreds of online and in-person events, including the Humane Hoax Online Conference, the Humane Hoax Chicken Webinar, the Conscious Eating Conference, and the Sonoma County VegFest. Over the last 3 decades, Hope has worked for the national nonprofits United Poultry Concerns and In Defense of Animals, has given countless presentations, written innumerable articles, and contributed chapters to 2 anthologies. So she's got just a little bit of experience, and we are so lucky to have her as part of this movement, I will just say. So we will have a Q&A portion after Hope's presentation, but hold your questions until then, until we call for them. And yeah, so Hope, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Right. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here this evening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can all see my slides. I do have a PowerPoint. Let's see. Get it going here. From beginning. There we go. All right. Fantastic. All right. That was really my long bio. I'm going to cut that bio down. I need to add this book to the bio too. So I'm gonna cut that down. That's just too much, but thank you. Thank you. It was very kind. All right. So, so I've been, in this work for 30 years, and I've been kind of researching and honing in on this issue that I call the humane hoax. Others have called it the humane myth, humane washing. It has a few different names, but I kind of been honing in on this issue for about 20 years now. Since I've been doing this work, I actually saw this transition into these labels in real time. And, you know, we didn't have these labels back in the 90s. They just didn't exist. So this has been a gradual transition. And I think it's been a reaction to the good work that vegans and advocates have been doing all these years for these past, 3 decades of exposing the problems with animal agriculture. And so the industry has responded with these labels and this marketing. And I saw this kind of happening, and I started to, get concerned that this could be, that I could see that this was certainly probably going to continue and get more popular, and we're going to see more and more of these labels. And it also concerned me that we were going to possibly start kind of appeasing customers and consumers, kind of reassuring them that things are improving when that's really not the reality. And I did extensive research for my first book. So the book that Michelle held up was actually my first book, The Ultimate Betrayal. Yes, there it is. It's been 10 years now since I wrote that book. I can't even believe that. It just flew by. But now I have this second book that has come out on the same subject, but this one is an anthology. This one is a collaborative effort of essays that I collected. And, so when I started seeing these labels like cage-free, free-range, organic, certified humane, all these things, I decided to start investigating it. And I actually went onto farms, and I'm going to show some images of that coming up, and talk a little about that investigative work that I did. I talked to stakeholders. I talked to the farmers themselves. I talked to past workers, people that have worked in these places. So I got a lot of testimony and a lot of information. And so I wrote my first book, The Ultimate Betrayal, the first one. And in these 10 years, it's been nothing but growing as far as the labeling, the marketing, as well as the activism's response, and people's in the vegan advocacy movement being more concerned, which is good. I partnered with Alistair Van Cleek, who founded the Micro Sanctuary movement, and Alistair and I created the Humane Hoax Project. And that's humanehoax.org, easy website to remember. And we do our conferences that we kind of talked about in the beginning before we started, and webinars around this issue. And I actually started thinking that I wanted to write a second book, but I didn't want to just write another book on the same subject. So I felt that it would be really wonderful to hear a variety of voices, a diversity of voices, because there were so many people now speaking out on this issue. So this is a collaborative effort. There's 18 chapters. I have authors and activists and academics and rescuers, sanctuary workers, all coming at the issue from different angles. I have essays by Carol Adams and Karen Davis, Sailesh Rao, Robert Grillo, Christopher Sol Eubanks, John Sanbanmatsu, many, many amazing names in the movement that I was just honored that they contributed. And so I really felt like it was important to hear from a variety of voices this time. And that's why I just edited a volume. I did write the introduction, a chapter, and the conclusion. But so just a kind of quick definition, I think we're all kind of on the same page here, but just what is the humane hoax? The mindset that there is a wide range of better ways to breed and slaughter animals, to produce animal products, kind of like labeling and marketing that conveys this false sense of improvement in the industry, either ethically or environmentally. Humane washing, greenwashing, that's all part of the humane hoax. On a larger sense, you can kind of break it down into 3 areas. One is humane washing and the labels and the language. the labels and the marketing. The second area is the greenwashing, which is the environmental impact, sustainability, all of that, sustainable labels. And the third is DIY slaughter and backyard egg keeping, and kind of the, that ethos of let's get out of the system and do it ourselves. But of course, issues arise when you commodify animals in any way. So, and we have numerous chapters actually in the book on that aspect of it that are just fascinating. The articles on kind of DIY, do it yourself, having eggs or having chickens for eggs, and slaughtering animals for their flesh. So those are kind of the three different aspects. So let's start though by talking about it. And actually, I break down in the book different parts. And the first part in the book is humane washing, that has some amazing articles in it, essays in it. So, but the basic kind of gist that I like to convey, or try to convey, with what is the humane hoax, what is humane washing, is basically that if a producer wants to have a profitable product, a product to sell where they make money, there are inherent cruelties that just can't be avoided to make the product profitable, right? These inherent cruelties that you just cannot circumvent, even if they wanted to, so there just really cannot truly be a humane product when you're commodifying, breeding, and killing animals. So, that's kind of the broader picture of it. Something that I think I like to address too is this small farm ethos. It's this really common myth that, it's part of the humane hoax, that the idea that small and local farms are more ethical, that just because it's a small farm, it's suddenly more ethical for some reason. And that's it's something that the industry has kind of created, right? This idea that just because it's small scale, it must be better. And that is not the case. And I'm going to get into why when we get into my investigative part. But again, just it being a small scale, a small farm, a family farm, a humane label, even if you met the owner or rancher, it does not necessarily mean that, besides all the other standard agricultural cruelties, that the animals were not treated inhumanely. So, of course, there is that there. So I'll talk in more details later. I'm just kind of doing a broad overview of the subject. And something else that I think is very, very, very important to know about this issue, because it's a criticism that I don't often get, but I get a criticism that I get here and there. And that is, the criticism goes something like this. So why do you focus on just a small number of animals on just a few farms? Why are you focusing on just a small number of animals on a few farms? We should focus on the majority of animals in industrial animal agriculture and factory farming, right? So there's a few things going on here and a few things to unpack with this criticism that I think are really important. And one is that big ag uses the humane hoax too. It is not just small farms. It's not just small farms with small numbers of animals. I have two examples here on the screen. There's numerous examples throughout the book. And these two examples are I believe in either my introduction or my chapter, I can't remember, but Butterball turkey, which you see here, is the largest producer of turkey in the United States. They're the biggest producer of turkey in the United States, and they use the American Certified Humane label. If you see on this package that label with the red barn, that is the American Certified Humane label. So, we're talking about processing facilities that are indoor warehouses with tens of thousands of birds that never see the light of day. And they are labeled American Certified Humane. And again, I get into more detail in the book as to how this label breaks down and why it's not what people think it is. But again, this is a huge, huge industry for turkey meat, Butterball. So it's not just a small number of animals. Fairlife Dairy is another example. Fairlife Dairy is, of course, a newer brand that was created because they say that they're better than the average. I mean, it's in their name, Fair Life, right? They're supposed to be better than just your conventional or whatever. However, they are huge. They have, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of farms all over the country, large scale operations. And there was an undercover investigation done in 2019 that exposed just horrible things. I mean, the videos were very, very hard to watch. Little calves being dragged and punched and kicked and thrown and, just brutal, brutal, brutal stuff. And here is, a whole dairy company that their entire ethos is that supposedly they're better. They're more humane, right? So this, again, it's big ag that uses this too. So we're not talking about a small number of animals. But there's another aspect to this critique of, well, why are you focusing on just a small number of animals? And the other aspect of this critique is that there is a systematic issue going on. There's a big picture issue happening here with these labels. And it's often called, or it's been called, the psychological refuge effect. And what that is basically is when, people justify their animal product consumption by incorrectly assuming that they are eating humanely treated animals, right? Or that the food that they bought is ethically produced, right? And because these labels are out there, people are thinking that there is some industry-wide improvement. So I'll give you for instance. So let's say that someone has heard about battery cage eggs and they were concerned and they thought, I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to hurt animals. And that's, I mean, one of the wonderful things about the work we do, I believe, is that people inherently don't want to hurt animals. I don't believe most people. I think most people, they don't want to see harm come to animals. So we have that going for us, right? In this work. And unfortunately, this Humane Hoax preys on that. So what happens is, let's say someone says, I don't want to be part of the battery cage egg thing. I don't want to hurt hens in that way. And they see a carton of cage-free eggs. And they're like, oh, great, I'll get the cage-free eggs, right? And so they start buying the cage-free eggs. Now, instead of avoiding eggs, which is what they would have had to do, right, to not be part of the suffering of the battery cages, they now have an option. They can buy the cage-free eggs. But when they go to the restaurant and get an omelet, that came from conventional eggs. When they go to the cafe and get a muffin, that's going to be from regular old eggs or whatever. They're still considering themselves an egg eater, right? And even though they're doing what they can, which is buying the carton of cage-free eggs at the store, they're still going to eat eggs in any other situation. And that's what the industry is banking on. They're hoping that that's what's going to happen. They want that to happen. So having a few humanely labeled things here and there, it helps the entire industry. And I would argue that it could possibly make people actually eat more animal products, feel more comfortable eating animal products, right? And not avoiding them. So this is a big, big issue. Much more, there's so much more going on than just a small number of animals on a small farm, okay? So just that's all part of that critique. This systematic issue that can, lull consumers into feeling better about eating animal products. It's very much a concern. Okay, so I said that I did some investigating when I was my first book, when I was researching for my first book, sorry. And in Sonoma County, California is where I lived for over 30 years. I've now moved to Oregon, but I lived in Sonoma County in this time. And there was so much alternative farming going on with all the organic dairy and cage-free eggs, and it was all over the county. almost all the farming was transitioning to these alternative labels. So I decided to do some investigating. So I would go out and find the chicken farms that were cage-free and free range. It was very difficult to find where they were. You did not know unless you knew what you were looking for. And this is what you would come across when you were first walking onto the property. Okay, keep out, biohazard, they trying to get people not to come and see what's going on. But if you were brave like I was back then, hopefully I would still be that brave. I walked past these signs, and this is typically what you would see. I also took this picture. Again, you can see the keep out signs, but these are the egg barns and the egg, rooms, housing. And in what would happen is actually some of these might have battery cage eggs in there, just the standard battery cages. And then others may have cage free, where it's just a floor system operation, right? And and my first thought was always like, well, if you really care, if you really think cage free is better for the birds, why don't you have them all in cage free? Well, it's because first of all, they don't care. They don't care about the birds. They care about having a whole different market to sell to and being able to sell more expensive eggs, So, that was shocking right there. But when I would walk up to these cage-free barns and kind of peer in, this is typically what I would see. Now, I didn't take this picture. It was very hard to take pictures because it was so dark. I did not have a picture come out good when I would go do these things. Because just looking through slats, I could see what was going on, but then when I tried to take a picture, it was just too dark. Especially, cameras were much worse back then. It was my phone camera. But this is typically what I would see. And so, what are we seeing here? I mean, this is an indoor environment so dark and crowded and cramped, and the stench of ammonia was awful. It's just burning their little beaks and throats and noses. They would still be debeaked. They would be, crowded and pecking each other, just trying to find any amount of space. It was really horrible. They were on top of each other. And and just miserable. I mean, and so someone's grabbing this carton of cage-free eggs, thinking that these birds are just living a stress-free life and that they're happy and everything's fine now, But there are so many cruelties beyond the cage. All these birds came from the horrible hatcheries, these hatcheries where they are brought into this world in sterile metal drawers, not in a loving nest with a mother hen. No, they never even see their mothers. They don't even know who their brothers or sisters are. The eggs are all thrown in, just whatever. And immediately when they come pecking out of their out of the eggs, they're thrown on a horrible, world of conveyor belts and conveyor belts and sexing machines where they're tossed around like canned goods. And it's just awful, awful, awful. So that's the hatchery, and that's the beginning of their lives. Then of course, they're only going to be in these barns for a few short months till they're considered spent and are going to go to slaughter at a brutal, horrible slaughter where all the other birds go to slaughter. So the cage-free label means so little. And unfortunately, it carries so much weight now. People really think that these birds are living a much better life. And the problem with this is that what the industry will do is they'll funnel all of the issues down to just a couple of words, 2 words that kind of sum up the entirety of the bird's existence: cage-free, grass-fed, free range. These 2 words that people think that they get this entire picture of what's going on, and it's not reality at all. And we can't funnel their entire existence into this one lens of just these 2 words. There's so much that they endure. There's so much cruelty beyond the cage. So yeah, so anyway, that's cage free. So I do want to talk a bit about dairy, because I did do some investigation of dairy as well. We still see on all the dairy operations, no matter what label you can think of, certified humane, organic, anything, you still have artificial insemination, the baby's taken away at birth, disease and sickness often untreated, and it can be even worse in organic because they aren't allowed to give them the pharmaceuticals. and of course sent to a brutal slaughter. So we're still seeing all these same, I mean, these are the things that get people to go vegan. These are the things that people, are like, these are horrible. This is a horrible industry. I'm going to go vegan. And now people have this, well, I'll just drink organic, but they don't realize that these same things are happening. It's so frustrating. So of course, this is what we want to believe. On the left, we want to believe in organic and in humane, that the babies are staying with the moms and they're in the grass. No, the reality is on the right. This is a little female. I know that because she has been taken from her mom and is being put in these calf hutches. The calf hutches, as you can see here, are kind of like plastic dog houses where they separate out the females, alone, sad, wanting their mother, psychologically traumatized to be without their mother. And that's very still common and typical. So when I was doing the investigations and going to these farms in the dairy industry, interestingly, it was very, very different than the chickens. Chickens are easy to hide. Chickens are very easy to hide, and they can keep the chickens in the same barn the entire time, and so you never see chickens, right? But cows are much larger animals. They have to move them around. They have to move them to the milking parlor and things like that. So they are much harder to hide. So it's completely different when you're walking up to the dairy facilities, and they have all these signs. They're certified organic, and real California milk, and everything's groovy here, nothing to see. It's very, very different and interesting than the chicken operations. But again, if you walk past these signs and walk right in, this is typically what you see. These again are rows and rows and rows of calf hutches. Every single one of those little hutches that you see has a baby calf that's been taken from their mother and is awaiting their first artificial insemination within 9 months or a year, less than a year. So this is a little baby that we saw on a farm where I actually got a tour. They actually do these tours. They call them, I think it's farm trails in Sonoma County, where they get groups to come and actually tour the facilities. And they're very staged and very sterile, and they take you exactly just where they want to take you. And this one, they took us into this barn, and they just had this one calf hutch, one little, I have another picture of, you can see it's just this big barn with just the one calf hutch and one baby. So it wasn't like just rows and rows of babies, just this one. And they kind of showed you, and she was cleaned up, and there was hay, which I never saw before with calf hutches. But still, if you know what to look for, what do we see here? We see the tag in her ear, right? That commodification from birth. She's a number, not someone, not some body, but something, a number. And she's also separated from her mother, and she's tiny. It's just awful that this is considered, this is the best of the best. We're organic, we're humane, right? Awful. So when I wasn't on a tour and I just went myself to these places, this is the typical stuff that I would see. Okay, animals in muck and manure, sometimes up to their ankles, up to their knees. This picture on the right that I took, this probably was a little baby male calf. You can see that baby male calf curled up next to the concrete trough there. This was probably a male because he wasn't taken to the other side of the dairy facility with the calf hutches. He was separated out and put in this pen awaiting transport to go to either veal or beef. He was unwanted, unneeded in the dairy industry. He was a byproduct and being sent off to slaughter. Curled up in the mud. It's, oh God, awful, awful, awful. So, this mama, she was very injured. Her back left leg, it's kind of hard to tell, but you can kind of tell from this picture. Her back left foot was swollen about 3 times the size of her other feet, and she was just limping her way across this paddock. It was awful, awful to watch. I actually called the Animal Humane Society, and it was a whole day thing, and trying to get a vet to her. And yeah, anyway, it was, and this was, and again, this, they had all those signs, organic, humane, all that stuff out in the front. So I want to talk a little about this romanticizing the idea of putting animals out to pasture, right? This is kind of what people think of when they think of these labels with cage-free, free range, things like that, grass-fed. If we just get the animals out of the confinement barns and out onto pasture, then this will solve all the problems, right? This will be the best way for them to live, all of that. This is really not the case. We have to examine this because these are domesticated animals. These are not wild animals. You can't just throw them outside and think that everything's going to be okay or everything's going to be better. There's sometimes actually there's a range of different issues that they face that are even worse than what can happen in confinement. So there's numerous studies, actual peer-reviewed studies that look into this and underscore just the myriad of problems in putting animals out to pasture. One of them is called the Animal Welfare and Production Challenges Associated with Pastured Pig Systems. Really great study. I encourage people to check it out. It was a 20-year meta-analysis. And what a meta-analysis means is that they didn't do one study. They looked at 20 years of studies and came to a conclusion from that. So a meta-analysis is really good science. And so they looked at from 2000 to 2020, numerous studies of organic and pastured pig systems. And they found problem after problem after problem. They found that pigs can be exposed to extreme temperatures, heat stress, not being able to get adequate shade, the lighter colored skin, which is very desirable because that's the lighter colored meat, the white meat, that they can get sunburn, blistering on their skin. And then in the winter, with extreme cold, frostbite, that piglets would die from hypothermia and pneumonia. So they're very, very susceptible to weather issues. Also, they're more vulnerable to predators, of course, being out in the pasture. They come in contact with wildlife, so there's more issues with pathogens, parasites, viruses, all of that. And we're having such an issue with bird flu, right? And that's exactly why even the free range, ones are not being able to put their birds outside because of bird flu. So that's a whole other thing. This study actually is in detailed in the first chapter of this book, which is a wonderful, wonderful chapter. It's titled "A Pig Called Silver," and it was written by Ingrid Taylor. She actually grew up on a small scale pig farm. And so she tells the story of growing up in this world. And, we often get accused as vegans of, well, you don't know what you're talking about. You've never been around animals. Well, there are a lot of vegans who actually did grow up in farming, and she is one of those. So she has this story to tell, and she goes into detail about this wonderful study as well. So really great. The very first chapter, well, that's the reason I put it first, is wonderful chapter. My favorite, one of my favorite chapters of the book. Just a final thought on this paper. It only covered farmed animal welfare. It didn't actually even cover transportation or slaughter. So there's a whole nother set of horrors that they endure that wasn't even covered, in this paper. It's just, it's crazy to think that they can put a humane label on these products. It's awful. Okay. So that's humane washing. So the second part of the book is greenwashing. And there are numerous chapters about greenwashing, which of course is the environmental aspect of this, getting into labels like grass-fed and free range, which often people think is better environmentally, which it absolutely is not. It has nothing to do with environmental. Regenerative grazing. Regenerative grazing is going to be a huge, huge issue. We're going to start hearing this more and more. The Farm Bill coming up You know, the Farm Bill is this year, and it's such an important piece of legislation where they allocate all this money in the farming and agriculture sector. And they are the regenerative animal ag people. They're going to be vying for that money. And we have to know how to talk about this. We have to know how to respond when someone says, but regenerative ag, you know, but regenerative grazing. And that's why I created this section. That's why there's these chapters in this book. I'm not going to get into it here, just time wise, you know, it's a lot to unpack, but I'll give a plug for my podcast, the Hope for the Animals podcast. Not the latest one, but two before it. I think it's 79, I want to say. I had Nicholas Carter on. Nicholas Carter is one of the authors from the book. He has a chapter in the book. I think it's called Grazing versus the Planet or something like that. And it's a great chapter. He really unpacks regenerative grazing. And if you don't want to read it, if you want to just hear about it, you can listen to my podcast with Nicholas Carter. We just really unpack it. He is so knowledgeable, and we dig in to why regenerative grazing is not the, you know, eco superstar that everyone is touting it to be. So we have to be careful of these things, and we have to learn about them and be able to talk about them. That's why I edited this book. So, so just moving on, just for time wise, I wish so much we could talk a lot about greenwashing, but I have a whole presentation that's kind of eco and greenwashing that you could probably find online if you want to know more about it too, just hearing from me. But anyway, so the third part of the book is called Language and Labels. And this is where we get into some really interesting stuff around the marketing of all of this and the psychology around all this, right? And you know, there's some interesting studies that I cite in the book. I'll just mention one of them. There was a survey done that found that 58% of people that were surveyed think that farmed animals are treated well, 58%, and 75% believe that the products they purchase come from humanely raised animals. 75%. There is not 75% of the market that's labeled humane, you know? So how is it that 75% of consumers are buying humane? They're not buying those labels. They just think because these labels exist that good things are happening, that better things are happening. The industry is shifting and reforming. So we have to be, this is such an important issue to talk about. So anyway, I mean, if anything, things are just getting worse for animals. You know, I mean, really, the farms are getting bigger, more technological industry, and it's just, things are just getting worse. So things are not getting better. But what's my next one? So the language around this issue is really, really, really critical. And there's actually some really good essays in this section, chapters in this section around language. And I just want to read you a quote that I felt was really interesting. This was in Devanatha Nair's chapter called Corrupting the Language of Animal Welfare. And she talked about how, you know, language really shapes the way we view the world. And speciesist language really shapes how we think about animals, and we think about, you know, this whole issue, and how we can, you know, that animals can be put into these different camps, right? We've got companion animal, pet, wild animal, food animal, right? So this compartmentalization of animals. So this is a really wonderful quote. It's also the crafty use of language in the stories we tell ourselves that allow us to fawn over an animal at the zoo and still be able to consume another animal's just a few moments later for lunch without raising too many existential qualms. So language is so important, incredibly important. So I wanted to talk about this one. I snapped a picture of this candy bar, chocolate bar, which is now using grass-fed milk chocolate. And this is, of course, Alter Eco, a very, very alternative, ecological company. And I was appalled when I saw it. And, it made me just stop and think, okay, so what is it? What do they want me to believe here? What do they want me to think is going on here? Do they want me to think that the animals are happier, that this product is more ecological, that it's healthier? It's all implied, right? It's all implied. Yes, to all those. That's what they want you to believe. But what does it really mean? Grass fed, it's two words. What do they mean? It means that the cow ate grass at some point in their life. That's it. That's all it means, you know. And there's all this other story and narrative that goes around it, right? That gets built up within these two words. It's very insidious, very manipulative. Another one that just kills me is this one: responsibly raised and unconditionally loved. Whoa, okay, this one. All right. So responsibly raised, we're seeing this now from Whole Foods, Chipotle's. It is, like all these, completely unregulated. I mean, nobody's giving like some kind of certification or whatever to use this term. It's completely unregulated. And this one is really interesting because it's kind of like sufficiently vague that it could be anything. Do they mean ethically? Do they mean environmentally? Who knows? They mean it all. That's what, of course, that's what they mean. Whatever you think, that's what it means, So it's so vague, you have no idea. And then this unconditionally loved. Oh, woo, wow. This is so just really gross to me, because what are we seeing here? We're seeing a burrito, right? We're seeing a burrito. But of course, that's not what they mean. What they mean, of course, is that the animal that has been slaughtered and is cut up, the animal's flesh that's in this burrito, was unconditionally loved somehow before their throat was slit, right? It's bizarre. It's psychologically just bizarre stuff. And it actually gets into this interesting place that is explored in the book in one of the chapters by John Sanbanmatsu. John Sanbanmatsu wrote this amazing chapter about femivorism. Okay, the chapter's called Murder, She Wrote. And femivores, it was dubbed by the New York Times, this term femivores. It's these women that left corporate America, left their corporate jobs and went to, left the city life or whatever, bought a farm, and are now breeding and raising and killing and butchering animals in some kind of quest for equality in the male dominated spaces of farming and ranching and butchery, right? And hunting and all that. And then they write memoirs about it. And it's this huge, like in the nonfiction category, it's a huge, huge sector of best-selling nonfiction books written by women that are killing animals. It's just this bizarre thing that's happening. But part of it, the interesting part, and he gets really, really into it in the chapter, is that they're using this very mothering language, like they're caring for like, this is what's different about us killing animals and not the men killing animals, is that we loved the animals. We're mothering them, we're taking care of them, we're being, loving and caretaking and all of this language around it. But then in just a few months, they're going to either send those animals to slaughter or slaughter them themselves. And, it's like they actually will say they treat them like family members. But would you slit the throat of your family member? Would you kill your child? It's just bizarre, bizarre stuff. Anyway, fascinating stuff. You got to read the book. Really, really great, interesting stuff. Okay, I actually want to just check in on time because I don't have a way of looking at how much time. Michelle, can you tell me how
Yeah, you're good. I mean, it's 10 to 8, but just
Okay.
keep going.
All
So,
right. Okay. Well, I'll try to wrap it up here because I do want to go into kind of the taking action section. So here we go. So how you can kind of take action with the Humane Hoax. So I really encourage you to please incorporate these issues into your activism, whether you're sharing memes on social media, creating memes, creating vegan literature, writing articles, whatever it is that you do, whatever your outlet is, try to incorporate the humane hoax into it. Okay, so one big thing, and this does take some time to unpack, so I might skip it. And if you all are interested, maybe we will we'll talk about it after. I don't know. I just time-wise, I might skip this part.
I think we're good for time.
Are we okay? I mean, okay.
We're
If we
okay
take
to go into
like
it. Yeah,
a
I
little
think
bit
so.
over the hour.
It's important.
Okay,
That's
all right.
fine.
All right. So I'll try to be quick. But so this is something that I around language, because language is just so important. And this is one that is a little bit controversial, but I am feeling more and more strongly about it the more and more I think about it. So I'm getting people backing me and feeling strongly about it too. I am open to conversations about it, but I feel that we need to stop saying factory farming, and here's why. Factory farming, it's a powerful term. It's done its job. It really has been an incredibly effective term, it evokes the industrial and the machinery, like treating animals like machines and all of that. So it's done its job. It's been really powerful. However, because of the shift in the industry, I'm concerned about this, because now people are saying things like, oh, well, my meat isn't factory farmed. I get it at Whole Foods. Or my eggs aren't factory farmed. I get them at the farmer's market or whatever, So there's this distinction being drawn. There's factory farming that everybody can be against. Even the industry can be against it. And there is small scale, there's humane, there's better farming, there's humane farming, right? So when we're saying stop factory farming, it's not necessarily a vegan message anymore. It used to be. That's what we meant, go vegan when we said stop factory farming, but that's not how it's perceived now. People are perceiving it. You say stop factory farming, they may think, oh, okay, I'll buy the organic, right? So we've got to be really careful about this. Another one is this 99%. And I just grabbed these two memes very easily off social media and the internet. They are all over the place. And I'll read this one. 95% of people want farmed animals to be well treated. 99% of farmed animals are not. Okay, what are we saying here? Are we saying that 1% of animals are treated well? Because that's basically what we're saying, right? Do we really believe that? Is that the message we want to send? Do we really believe that 1% of farms is, the animals are pampered and getting massages and there's butterflies and they're in the field and everything's fine? No, we know that's not the reality. We know that's not the reality. We know the reality is that even on the 1% of small farms, there's still separation of families. There is still, painful body mutilations. There's still over confinement. There's still slaughter at a, young age, brutal. We know all that, right? So why are we saying this? Why are we saying that 1% is okay? We have to be careful of this language. So my Humane Hoax team, we have a volunteer Humane Hoax team that we meet monthly and kind of talk about this stuff and think about ways that we can promote. And we came up with this comic that we had an artist draw up, and I'll just read it to you. So in the first little square here is someone leafleting, and they say, hey, I'd like to tell you about how bad factory farming is. And this person says, oh, great. Wow, I'm so glad I spoke to you. From now on, I'll only buy humanely raised meat, dairy, and eggs. And off they go, because that's all the time you have, right? And then this person's like, but wait, all animal agriculture is cruel. Humanely raised isn't better. The calves are still taken from birth, all the bad stuff, right? This person is happily hopping off to buy their humanely raised meat, saying, okay, got it. Factory farming's bad, so humane farming must be good. Now I can buy even more and feel good about it. So moral of the story, we just really got to think about our language, be careful of our language and what we are saying. All right, enough of that. So another way that you can help is to please be an ambassador of this book. Let's get this information out there. Buy a copy for your local library, buy a copy for a friend, write a review on Amazon. That helps me so much. It's going to help bump up that algorithm or whatever to get it, more out there. You don't have to have bought the book on Amazon. You just need to be an existing Amazon customer to be able to write a review. And that's super helpful. Give it a 5-star review, write a review, 5-star, thing, 5-star review, and then write a review. Share about the book on social media. That would be awesome. Some other things you can do. There is literature that is specific to this issue out there. Over here on the right is my organization, Compassionate Living's Humane Hoax leafleting card. We have this one-sided, just a half-page hard card leaflet that you can give out that's around the humane hoax. This other one is from United Poultry Concerns, this free range booklet that they have. Other organizations have ones that are specific to the humane hoax. So if you leaflet, if you want to put these out there, be sure to get something around the humane hoax. More ideas, create and share videos, maybe, or if you create videos or if you share videos, have them be around the humane hoax issue. Vegan podcasts that feature the humane hoax, share those. Magazine articles, blogs, anything around the humane hoax. Target a local humane hoax entity if you do leafleting or protest or outreach or whatever. Now I say to do this with thoughtfulness and much preparation. And the reason I say that is because you will get the criticism. Like, for instance, this is a picture from an outreach event that we used to do in Sonoma County, California, in Petaluma, California. There was a humane butcher shop that was just kind of on the main strip, and they had, whatever, humanely raised veal and all of that right there in downtown Petaluma. And of course, we got the critique. Why are you targeting these people? They're trying to do it better. You should be down the street at Safeway. They're the ones you should be targeting, So, be aware that that will happen and be prepared with the answer to that, and in written form, the answer to that. So have a piece of literature that explains why you're targeting the humane myth, right? So be very prepared if you're going to do that kind of outreach. Okay. So make memes. These are 2 memes that I made around the humane hoax issue. Cage-free is not cruelty-free. And the other one says, regenerative grazing is the equivalent of clean coal. So just some, think of an idea about the humane myth and make memes. Okay, so for my next book project, we're getting to the end, almost finished here. My next book project is that I want to do something. If you're familiar with Carol Adams' The Sexual Politics of Meat, of course, really, really amazing, legendary Carol Adams that wrote The Sexual Politics of Meat back in 1990, the definitive work of feminism and animal rights. She did a second book called The Pornography of Meat later, where she had people, because of her first book, she had so many people sending her imagery of animals being feminized, animals in sexualized feminist way, or like being sexualized as women. You know what I'm talking about? Like, you have a chicken with breasts, that kind of thing. Anyway, she had so many of those pictures that she made a book. And I want to do something similar with the humane hoax. So I want to collect images of the humane hoax and create a book. So I need all of you to be looking for this in your communities, be looking for imagery of the humane hoax, take high resolution pictures and send to me. And these are just a few examples. Down here at the bottom is the Happy Lamb restaurant, right? Happy Lamb hot pot restaurant, with a little lamb as their logo. Awful. This one in the middle, actually, if you can see, it says Mindful Meats. That is on the side of a slaughterhouse. And this I talk about in my chapter. So if you read my chapter, I talk about this slaughterhouse that it's in Petaluma, California. And it had painted on the side Mindful Meats. And to think that anything mindful is going on in a slaughterhouse is, oh God. So I write about that in my chapter. That's a picture of the slaughterhouse. So anyway, if you see, if you're now that you're thinking about it, if you see these images out in the world, please take pictures and send them to me. And just to end and wrap up, I just want to say that even though I speak, strongly out against this stuff, I believe that this is a hopeful thing, something that we need to go through as a society, as a community. You know, it's a good sign that people want animals to be treated humanely. That's good. That people are seeking out these products, that these products sell. That's a good thing. The ultimate kind of logical conclusion of we should treat the animals humanely is that we should not kill them. We're going to get there. I think people will eventually get there, right? But we can't be complacent about it. We've got to keep educating about it. We can't assume that they're going to get there on their own, right? So we've got to keep educating about this. And this is an industry that I feel is unreformable, really. This is like we're trying to reform this industry. It's unreformable. There's no humane way to commodify and kill an animal. So we're going to get there, I believe. A little plug for my podcast, Hope for the Animals podcast. I have wonderful guests on. We talk about all kinds of different animal issues. I focus on justice, the environment, sanctuaries. I focus on the animals. So it's not health, not nutrition, you're not going to hear about food on my podcast. It's just all animals, all advocacy. And let's see. We'll move on. I'll wrap it up. This is a final quote from my new book. We must not let the deception of new marketing eclipse the fundamental cruelty of animal agriculture. And I'll end it there.
Nice. Thank you, Hope.
Sure. Hope I didn't go too far over the hour.
No, you're good. I'm just putting your website in the chat, humanehoax.org.
Humanehoax.org.
Okay.
Hopefortheanimalspodcast.org.
Excellent.
That's
Do you want to stop the screen share?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So then we can now open up for questions.
What'd you think?
What did you think? What did this make you think? Hold on, I'm just spotlighting it. Okay, there was a question from Nellie. What's your assessment of the effects of street heat protests? I'm not sure what that is, versus classroom lectures.
Maybe you're talking about like the cubes of truth, that kind of thing, like the outreach that's videos and leafleting as opposed to classroom lectures. Is that, maybe that's, I think, what the question is. Both. We need both. I wouldn't pick one over the other. I think we need a variety of activism going on. I think that whatever you feel drawn to, whatever is more comfortable for you, that's what you should be doing, because we need it all. I really feel that we need a wide variety of activism, and it's whatever you are drawn to. Yeah.
Nellie, do you want to add to that or clarify anything on that? You want to unmute?
No, that was a good answer. Thanks.
Okay. Excellent. It was a good answer. All right. Who else? Okay. And so John is asking in the chat, what differences are there between factory farming and small family run animal farms?
What differences are there? Well, here's the thing that nobody wants you to believe and they don't want to tell you, but there's really no difference other than the amount of animals. Truly. I mean, that's when I did my investigations, and I did numerous investigations. I went to large scale industrial facilities, all on in the Central Valley, Highway 5. There's all these big, factory farms, industrial farms. And I went to those and checked those out. And then I went to the smaller farms on the coast, in the coastal areas, Marin, Sonoma County. And I saw basically the same thing, other than there was a smaller number of animals. Now that can vary farm to farm, that really can vary farm to farm. Sometimes the animals had a bit more space on the smaller farms. So certainly there could be a little less crowding. That can be the case, but that's not always the case. And that certainly wasn't that way for all of the small farms I saw. A lot of them were incredibly overcrowded. So, and even some of the bigger ones seem to have much more space. I went to one battery cage farm where the chickens honestly looked in pretty good shape. They didn't look that bad. They were not that crowded in the battery cages. They only had like 4 or 5 in a cage. They didn't look that bad. And then I'd go to a cage-free facility where the birds just looked like they were on the verge of death, and they were featherless and pecking and on each other. And I mean, it was just, so it's really hard for me to say. A lot of people will ask me, well, what labels do you recommend? What are the best labels? And when I went into this work, honestly, I thought that I was going to be able to say, or I thought that I was going to be saying, well, American Certified Humane is better, but going vegan's best. Or, free range is better, but going vegan's best. No, there's no way I can say that. I can't say that with any kind of, truth. It's just not the truth. I saw farms with labels that had these humane labels that were worse than what I saw in some of the industrial. So, and that's the same thing, not only just my observation, but the same thing I heard from workers, because I interviewed like at least 20, maybe more, former workers at both small scale and large scale. And a lot of them had worked at both, industrial and small scale operations, in slaughterhouses and everything. And I even interviewed a guy who worked at a small scale slaughterhouse, which is very unusual. Most of the small scale animals that are raised in with a humane label or whatever are going to the same slaughterhouse. But I interviewed this guy who actually worked at a slaughterhouse that was small scale, and every piece of meat that comes out of there has some kind of humane label. And he told me just horror stories. I'll be brief, but he would see lambs being slaughtered where they're hung up by just one back leg, their skin ripped off, and they were still like bawing and screaming. And this was at a humane slaughterhouse. So yeah, I cannot recommend anything, and there's really no difference, is the bottom line.
Well, that's a good, do you think like that's a good thing to say when we're outreaching and we get that pushback or that question about the difference, or they buy from, like you were saying in your presentation, would you say first thing out of your mouth to someone might be, there's essentially no difference?
Yeah, it's tough when you can't unpack it like I just did. That makes it harder.
It's true, because you usually only have a window of like a minute.
Yeah, I know.
That's what is so frustrating.
I know. And that's why it's really important, I think, to get your sound bites. I have these certain sound bites that I use when I'm like in a quick situation, like at the market, I'm just at whatever, at the store, and somebody asks, what I often will say, this is one of my sound bites, is I say, there's so little difference between small scale and large scale. I said, I'll say, there's still painful body mutilations, slaughter at a young age, separation of families, these things are universal. So that's kind of one little thing that I usually say. I just point out some of the horrors that, that the reason we avoid because we're vegan, but that people think are somehow avoided with these labels. So I kind of pick 3 things, or, a few things that I can say quickly that all animal agriculture share. And another thing I'll often say is, certain animal agriculture practices are just universal to making a product profitable. They can't circumvent these things. And so, they're always going to separate families. They're always going to slaughter at a very young age. They all go to the same brutal slaughter. So there's really no difference. Something like that, you know?
Yeah, I like that. I'm writing this down. I hope other folks are too, because we
Yeah.
need a
So,
few
I mean,
keywords to sort of
yeah,
memorize. And you're right, like the words that we choose are important in making them like emotionally evocative. If you only have, 60 seconds with that person, you want to make them feel what the animals feel perhaps a little bit versus versus shaming them. Of course, we don't want to shame anybody because they'll shut down and they'll turn off and they'll turn away and they won't listen. And versus like numbers, right? Do you
yeah.
talk
Well, and
statistics
on
when
that,
you're
yeah,
or
on that,
numbers or
well, 2 points. I'll get to the statistics, but you brought up an interesting question or an interesting point about the shaming. With this issue, actually, what I completely take a very positive interaction. Like if someone's asking me about these labels or something, the first thing I say is, wow, thank you so much for caring. That's so great that you care enough to pay more to buy cage-free eggs. That's great. Like I'll give them props for caring. And I think that's really important to start with the positive, thank you for caring about animals. Let me tell you the truth behind these labels, that kind of thing.
right. You
So,
you really seem to care. Opening
yeah,
the door and some positive reinforcement.
yes.
Now
And
they're
if you really
listening.
do care, let me tell you the truth. Yeah. Yeah.
And you can own it too. You can say, here's what I learned. I thought the same as you at one
Yes,
time.
exactly.
Here's what I've come to learn. I was shocked. I was
Yeah.
shocked when I learned this.
Yes. That's so good, Michelle. It's so good to be personal with it and say, I do this because, and
Right.
yeah, not like
People are
you should
less likely to
do
get
it.
defensive when you're
Right.
just sharing your experience.
Yes. So good. So good.
There was
And
a question. Go ahead.
oh, well, really quickly, as you asked about statistics and numbers, I avoid
Yeah.
them. I think that and there have been studies done actually about this with different kinds of advocacy and whether, because when people hear these big numbers, they kind of shut down or get kind of like lost in it. When you're talking about one individual animal and the experience of this one animal, and individualize and personalize that animal, that is so good. That I think that really evokes that emotion that's going to possibly, bring someone to change. Some people have more logical brains, maybe they'll get into the numbers and all that, but I think the majority of people, they're going to make change through emotion, right? That's, so you got to feel it. And the stories of
Absolutely.
individual animals. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's a connection between high emotion and memory as well. So they're
Yeah.
going to, if they feel a high heightened emotion when they're talking to you, they're much more likely to remember it as they walk away, or even the
Yeah.
next day, or even the next time they're buying something. So and I love this suggestion has come up so many times in other workshops we have, putting a face, centering the animals, putting a face on the animals as individuals versus groups, large groups. All the fish,
Yeah.
all the cows, all
Yeah.
the chickens helps as well. And maybe sharing, the story of one sanctuary animal, an animal who's at a sanctuary that has a name. Her
Right.
name is this, and here's her story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's where she was, how horrific it was, and here's where she is now.
Yeah. You can even just say, the calf is taken from her mother at birth, just making it one animal that you're talking about. Yeah.
Someone, Frida asked in the chat, have you ever visited a livestock auction?
Yes.
And adding to that, I was wondering how you feel about, because there's mixed feelings about paying to rescue, like actually purchasing,
Yeah.
like at an auction, an animal so that you can rescue them. How do you feel about that? I have mixed feelings. I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, all of that. So
Mm,
uh, I lived right down the street from an auction yard. Petaluma is, I lived in Petaluma for many, many, many years, and near Petaluma for 30 years. And that is it's the kind of the heart of ag in Sonoma County is Petaluma, and that's where the auction yard is and has been for so many years. And I have gone to that auction yard numerous times. This was, back 15 years ago. Went to the auction yard. We videotaped, and it's really hard to videotape when your video camera is as big as a toaster, let me tell you, back then, right? Because we just had these huge video cameras. But we would still do that. We would, videotape, and we would see what was going on. And there was controversy. There were people, activists and sanctuary people that would buy animals from the auction yard. Um, you know, it's really hard because, yeah, in theory, we should not do that. Absolutely not. You don't want to pay for this to continue. You don't want to pay
Right.
the
You're
industry. You never
enabling,
want to give
empowering,
money to the
adding.
industry. Never.
Mhm.
Absolutely. You know, that is my stance. Absolutely. However, here's someone who has the money, has the space, can take this animal right then. Am I really going to say don't do that? I don't know. That's, you know,
The
it's a
animals don't know the difference. They don't know they're on sale. They don't know there's a price on their head. It's
that's
their
right.
life is at
Right.
stake. It's such a
That's right.
hard.
It's so, you know, I mean, I would never ever, I would never, you know, call someone out publicly for doing that. I may talk to them privately, like, hey, try not to do that. And let's find other
Last
ways to
resort,
rescue,
maybe only
you
as a
know, yeah,
last
try to
resort.
rescue. I mean, because for, you know, the way you have to look at it, and it's so hard because you have to turn off your heart in this way. But, you know, for that one animal that you rescue at the auction that you paid for, there's 10 others that you could get for free and rescue, you know, so that you could find for free, you know what I mean, in some other bad situation. So ugh, that's a tough one.
It's a case by case,
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
case by
thing.
case.
But
Absolutely.
obviously we can't rescue our way out of this problem. It's
No.
systemic. It's systemic and it's mindset, that has to shift.
Yeah.
So I have some questions but okay. So Tenebrae in the chat, how can I get personal friends, family to bear witness and advocate? Friends have yelled, don't tell me when I refuse. We all have had that with family. They
Yeah.
don't tell me. When I refuse food with animal products, in terms of them, right? It's such a mixed, right? I'm
It's so
against
hard.
it. I don't want to hear about it, yet I'm gonna
Yeah.
participate in it.
Yeah. This is a really tough one with friends and family. You know, it's really, really tough. I've I've lots to say. I'll try to make it brief. So, um, my first my first thing to say is, don't rely on friends and family. You don't need them. We don't need them to go vegan. I know we feel we do, and it's like we want them to because they're the ones we hang out with, they're the ones we eat with. We want to feel comfortable, and we want to, we want them to go vegan because they're caring people. Of course, they're going to go vegan. Guess what? They may not. They may never. And I am living proof of that. 34 years, I realized that I'm actually 34 years vegan. I was like, oh God, it's all running together. I'm actually 34 years vegan, and I have not had one family member go vegan, not even vegetarian, not one. They all still eat meat. So, what do you do? I mean, so what I have to do to kind of like, feel okay about it, protect myself, is realize and step back from it and think, I don't need them. I am doing the outreach work, and I am connecting with others that do want to hear it, that do want to go vegan, that do want to know, and they're the ones we want to be talking to. They're the ones we want to put our energy into. So, try not to get bogged down or caught up in the, I've got to, say the right thing to my family, and I've got to get them to go vegan. It may never happen. And it may drive a horrible wedge between you and some of them, which it has with some of my family, that is kind of unrecoverable now in a way. So, assess whether you want that to happen or not. I kind of wish I hadn't pushed as much as I did. Pushing, I don't mean pushing, but just, talking about it as much as I did. It was pointless. It didn't work. all the different ways I tried didn't work. So, why did I put that energy into it? So, just be careful with yourself and your, how much you can endure. And another part of this that's very important is find your vegan people, find your vegan family, find your vegan friends, find that community that supports you, that gets you, that understands you, that you can talk with, that you can bitch about meat eaters to, that's so important. I think, so, so that, and now I have what I consider true family, my vegan family. My biological family, I still love them. I still see them on occasion. I've actually separated an entire coast away from them now. But it's yeah, you've got to protect yourself and be in it for a sustainable period of time in the long term. You don't want to do things that are going to the main reason that people go back from being vegan, I think, and there are studies that can back this up, is social. It's because they didn't feel supported in their social circles, and they felt that, they didn't want to be the outcast. So, we've got to be careful of that, protect yourself, find your vegan folks, and, family may not be it. And it may be that if you just don't talk about it, like, I wonder, it's funny, I go back in time and think, and I'm like, what if I just didn't talk about it ever? And I just brought my own vegan food and didn't talk about it. It may be different. It may have been that maybe some of them would have been more interested, gone vegan. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not. But it would have been better on me psychologically if I had known that 30 years down the road, they wouldn't be vegan, It's anyway, whatever. I don't know.
It would be nice.
That was helpful.
If anybody relates to what Hope just said, which I'm sure everybody does, you can share in the chat, and the struggle is real when it comes to family. It seems like a whole different ball game, I guess. And you're right. Sometimes all we can do is just lead by example and hope, they'll just ask questions. They just don't even ask questions. My family, they don't even have curiosity, but anyway, we can relate that. Tenebrae, did you want to unmute? Did you want to add to what you were asking anything or no?
I don't have much to add. It just, I have one vegan friend and she refuses to see any imagery. I've told her how profoundly it affected me, that it caused me to be vegan. Joanne MacArthur's book, Hidden. It started with the Humane Hoax, the visual that you showed of the wall-to-wall chickens in one giant cage. I was gobsmacked. And you showed cartons and I was like, I've bought that. That started it. And then I went to an interview with Joanne MacArthur and then read her book, and it rocked my world. I have never been the same.
Wow. Yeah.
But so thank you for planting that seed.
Sure. Reach out, try to find other vegans, like start a little restaurant meetup or something. And, you got to have your vegan peeps.
And we're just reminded that you never know who you're going to reach anyway, even if it seems like we're not reaching. Look, you planted seeds, and maybe we can't be attached to the outcome, but certainly we can, we can share. But yeah, so very important. Frida asks, are fishes talked about in the book?
No, I actually, I tried to find someone that could write about fish in the Humane Hoax way. I tried very hard because I'm a big advocate of speaking about fish, and I actually do an entire fish presentation. It's called Sentience in the Sea. And if you Google on YouTube, Sentience in the Sea, Hope Bohanec, you could watch my presentation. I've given it for the last, 7-10 years at different venues. And I actually get into not only just fishing and the fishing industry, but the individual lives of fish and all of the amazing research around the emotional lives and parenting and all these fascinating things about fish. It's my favorite presentation I give. I love talking about fish. So I think fish are really important to talk about. I didn't find a way to work them into the book, and it bums me out, but no, unfortunately. But maybe I'll do an entire other book about fish because I want to. So I don't know.
You can only put so much in one book. And what we had, as a resource, we did an AAM workshop with Mary Finelli from fishfield.org. And if anybody goes back to our YouTube channel and watches that workshop, she presented such a great overview about the sentience of fish and what's going on with fishes. And she also put a few resources. I cannot remember the names of the books right now at all, but if you look through that, there's some great books.
Jonathan Balcombe, What a Fish Knows. What a Fish Knows by Jonathan Balcombe, the best, like vegan-centered, advocacy-centered book on fish, and all the latest research. And I pulled a lot of my research from that book. What a Fish Knows by Jonathan Balcombe is a great book. And I actually had Mary on my podcast. And for my podcast, what I was going to say in the presentation, actually, if you go to the homepage of my website, I have a drop-down menu with categories, and I've categorized the podcasts if they have something that's specific to a category. And I do have a fish category, so you can go to the fish category and see all the podcasts. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 where I did focus on fish on the podcast.
I'm not surprised that you cover so much there. And I was wondering if we should use, we're talking about terms, like the term abolitionism, abolitionist. Is that a term? Is that too big a word, too long a word, or too make people, if you're doing outreach, is it a loaded word? Is it a trigger word? Or is it effective?
I don't use it. I'm not opposed to using it necessarily, but I don't personally use it. I feel it's a little co-opted, honestly, from the issue of the anti-slavery movement. That was where it came from, and I feel a little uncomfortable using it for that reason, honestly. I don't know. I'm not, and I actually haven't heard in the kind of like, anti-oppression aspects how they feel about using that term, but that's why it bothers me. But I also, I think, I don't know. It has to do with how much do we want people to learn and understand? I mean, because people outside of our realm aren't going to know what the heck that means or what it represents. But if we're talking internally, I don't know. I prefer, animal liberation, animal rights. I think these are better terms, especially because animals are in them and focused. Abolition it feels more like we're talking about us and not the animals. So these are all very subtle language things. So that's another reason why I don't like the term. I don't know. Yeah,
that's all true. It's not necessarily black and white, and different terms land differently, certainly. But I was going to ask you also about like using footage, which obviously you are collecting pictures and videos. So it's something that you feel is powerful and strong, in terms of tips for that, should we recommend documentaries? Not that all of it. You're going to say like all of it, right? Still images as well as documentaries, as well as undercover video.
Yeah,
is powerful.
Yeah, I mean, and I will preface this by saying that, none of us know really what works. We really don't. I mean, we're all making educated guesses at this point. And if someone says definitively, yes, this works, this is exactly right, take that with a grain of salt, because really nobody really knows. So I'll start with that. When I say, do it this way, do it that way, or I do it this way, do it that way, I'm coming from a place of having done this for 30 years and having tried everything. I mean, really, I have run the gamut. I have gone from, my roots in my 20s was, direct action, lockdowns, and I was arrested over 14 times in the Bay Area for different events, and I mean, crazy stuff that we did. So I, direct action. And then I swung to the legislative side, and I worked on Proposition 2, if anybody remembers that from long ago. And I worked with, the welfarists, like the legislation and, that kind of stuff, cage free. I did all that. And, and now I have kind of swung somewhere in the middle with vegan education. And that's where I have landed, where I feel is the most effective. And as far as graphic imagery goes, this is how I feel about that. I think, and there's a little bit of study to back this up. I've seen studies that actually back this up, that graphic imagery can be very, very effective. It depends on the venue, like how the person is getting the information, getting the images. That can be a big factor in whether it's effective or not. If someone is prepared to see the imagery, if they know they're going into it, then it can be effective. I think this is how I feel about it. That like if they're given a trigger warning in the beginning, and see for my presentation today, I didn't really use too graphic imagery because I knew that everybody in here was pretty much all on board, pretty much all vegans, activists, so we don't really need to see it. We're there, we get it. Now, if I'm doing a presentation for people that I know, like a good amount of them are not even vegan, I will use graphic imagery because they need to see it. They haven't seen it. They need to see it. But I will give a trigger warning, like right before the slide comes. I'll be like, okay, so this next slide is a little graphic, but I feel it's important for us to bear witness and see this. So just prepare yourself, and then I'll go to the slide, right? I think that helps. I think that if someone is ready for it, then they're more able to see it. Because I think what happens is they'll be like, where I don't feel it's so effective is if you're walking down the street and there's the cube of truth and they just like glance over and they're seeing this graphic thing and they're like, oh God, oh my God. Or they're putting their hands over their children's eyes. I don't want to see that. I don't look at that. I don't know if that, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
For some.
I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But to me, that feels like not the best for them to, I feel like they may put up boundaries and barriers and excuses, there's psychological stuff around this too. And I'm not remembering, like the backfire effect, right? Where you're confronted with your ethics. And so you double down on how you feel, and you get more embedded in your, whatever it is, meat eating, carnism, because you have been confronted with it and you have to defend yourself, right? That's called the backfire effect. And I'm concerned that if they get graphic imagery in that kind of a shocking way, that there can be a backfire effect that goes on. Again, I'm not an expert other than I've been doing it for a while and I've seen reactions and I listen and I feel like that's where the place that I've come to is I think that graphic imagery can be very, and then also on social media, people often ask, well, how much graphic imagery should we put in social media and on a site, right? For me and I have Facebook and Instagram pages that honestly, I'll say I'm not very good with social media as far as outreach. I don't know how I really need help. If anybody can help me with social media and reaching people, getting like the pages to be seen more, that's where I need help. I don't get that part. But I do have an opinion on how much graphic imagery to use. But I've heard this from others too, that if you, use it sparingly, like not just graphic after graphic after graphic, because then it's just too much and someone may unfollow your page. But if you have mostly just, information and
and Facebook may put you in Facebook jail.
Well, yeah, that too.
That's
You gotta worry about that. But just, having, whatever, just, cute animal images and information about veganism, la, 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 this event's coming. And then every now and again, I do put a graphic image up. I will put a graphic image up to show the reality just every now and again, because people need to see it. People need to know, but they don't want to be bombarded with it. So
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, use your discretion with that. And a couple things I like about what you said, I like the reminder of saying, trigger warning, because in that second or two, it gives people a chance to opt in or opt out.
Right.
They can shut their eyes, but it's if they opt in, there's a little bit more engagement, right? And taking responsibility for what they're about to see, because subconsciously they're saying okay and giving themselves permission to at least see it. And I've also heard from some of the research bears out that when you're using footage, if you use juxtapositions strategically, like the juxtaposition of the graphic, terrible stuff in the slaughterhouses, and immediately following that, the juxtaposition of the actual happy cow who is free, who's in a sanctuary, you know, babies with their mothers. There's something psychologically about that, you know,
like
the
that.
contrast and
Yeah.
comparing the juxtaposition of that
Yeah, it's a good idea.
as well. Yeah. Yeah, there's really so much here. I think, you know, we're going to start to wrap up in a minute or so, but don't go anywhere, you guys, because I'll have some wrap up announcements and words and things. But thank you everybody, you know, for being here. Hope, I'm going to just send it back to you, I think, for any final words of hope. You knew that was coming. Any final words of hope in terms of, you know, this being our topic, the humane hoax, and communicating that, and we ourselves really being grounded in knowledge and educating ourselves. And you're helping us with your book, and you're speaking to us is helping us to be more educated, so we can, a better educated activist is a more effective activist.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered it. I just thank you so much, Michelle, for having me and for letting me be here. And I encourage everyone to please get the book, support the book, share the book. It's got such amazing information. It is, you know, years of work and writing and editing. And it's, you know, it's a huge, huge, huge project to put together a book. And my biggest fear in the world is that nobody gets it, or nobody gets it in their hands, you know, that the people that want to hear it, that need to know it, don't get access to it. So so help me, you know, are the ones that can help me to get the book out there, reach people, and make the project and all the work I put into it worth it. So but you know, it is hopeful. I think we're moving in the right direction. I think we've come so far. Being a 30-year vegan, I see that more so than I think others. I think people that have just got in the last 10 years, you don't realize like how far we have come. I mean, 30 years ago, you know, when I first went vegan, if you wanted a cookie, you had to bake it. I mean, there was nothing, you know. It was really, it's amazing how far we've come. And I do see a future where the animals are free of human imposed suffering. I really do, because I think that ultimately people care, inherently people care, and they don't want to hurt animals, the majority of people. So we just have to keep educating and keep plugging on. I think we will get there. So yeah, anyway, thank you so much for having me.
I think we're going to ride those wings of what you just said, and keep that hope in our heart when we're out there in this, you know, when we're out there in this world. So thank you, everybody. Buy Hope's books is a good thing to do, and share them and gift them perhaps to, you know, to other people. Share this video with other people. And maybe we got to have Hope come and tell us how to write a book, maybe a workshop on writing a book as activism, because I think there's a book in many of us, not me, maybe, but not, but but many people have a book in them waiting to come out. So let me wrap up with some announcements, folks, some AAM announcements. So hold on. We have upcoming workshops. On June 15th, we have You Can Teach an Old Dog New Tricks, Going Vegan Later in Life, with Eric Lindstrom, Director of Farm. On July 13th, we have Communication Skills and Coping Tools for Activists. And on July 20th, we have The Turning Point in the Animal Freedom Movement with Robert Grillo. And more workshops to be announced. And again, please check out our previous workshops on our YouTube channel, and please subscribe. I'd also like to announce our 2023 live events. The Colorado Convergence is taking place in and around Denver. The dates are June 24th through July 1st. The Portland, Oregon Convergence is August 4th through the 12th. And the Ohio occurrence is September 1st through 3rd in and around Cincinnati. No experience required. Everyone is welcome to attend our convergences, but registration is required, especially if you want to sleep in the Airbnb, the activist house. So you'll find the events on our Facebook page and website. If you would like to share your Instagram handle in the chat so we can all keep in touch, if you'd like to be on our email newsletter list, if you're not already, you can drop your email in the chat and we'll add you. Please consider becoming a patron by finding AAM on Patreon. Your donations allow AAM to continue to provide free educational resources for activists, which ultimately saves more animals. So that wraps up another AAM workshop. Thank you, Hope, for your time and wisdom. Thank you all for being here and the tireless work you're doing for animals. If you're interested in becoming a mentor or mentee or to get more involved, reach out to us at our website, animalactivismmentorship.com. And that's it for now. So stay strong, everyone, and live vegan.